Welcome to the Umbra Vortex, where whispers begin and screams never end. Beyond this point, only madness awaits. This isn't a place for comfort, only for truth. Not the kind found in books or muttered in confession, but a raw, unfiltered reality, cloaked in shadow, stitched with dread, and pulsing just beneath the skin of sanity. I'm Edward J. Hallow, and I'll be the last voice you hear before the silence consumes you. Tonight, you'll encounter a tale that's best left unheard, a story of a mind unraveling, where the line between truth and delusion blurs, and something is always listening. There's a sound, constant, relentless, that no one can ignore. A sound that drives a man to the edge and beyond. This is the story of the telltale heart, and the price of hearing it. They say guilt is a ghost with no face, only a heartbeat. A sound that grows louder the more you try to silence it. In this tale, madness wears the mask of reason, and murder waltzes in the skin of sanity. So lean in close. Listen carefully. There's something beneath the floorboards, and it's still beating. There are homes that remember, not just in the creak of a stair or the groan of a rafter, but in the walls themselves, swollen with memory, thick with secrets, dense with the weight of the past. This house, a lean, narrow coffin of a dwelling, had seen far too much. It was as if the house itself had grown tired, the foundation sagging with the burden of forgotten things. The wallpaper peeled like old skin, its faded pattern a shroud for the stories trapped within the dark corners. The air was stale, heavy with the dampness that never quite left, and the scent of rust. Or was it blood? It didn't matter. Some places are designed to be forgotten, but there are others that never forget you. They wait. And this one, this house, waited. In it lived two souls, an old man, fragile and frail, fading like the evening light, and the narrator. He was a man who insisted he was not mad. He had to be. He was a rational man, a man of reason. He could smile at you and speak calmly of the stars, of the natural order, of the intricacies of the human form. His voice never wavered. His thoughts were sharp, precise, but something wasn't quite right. It started with the sounds, the whispers in the walls, the flicker of the lamps when no draught should be there, the subtle creaks that seemed to speak in some language only the house could understand. And then, the eye, the old man's eye. It wasn't just blind, it wasn't simply pale. No, it was wrong. It was a grotesque, milky orb that seemed to glisten even in shadow. It did not look at you. It pierced you. It dissected you from across the room, cutting through your defenses like a scalpel through flesh. And the narrator, despite all his logic, despite the calm assurance of his rational mind, couldn't bear it. The eye haunted him. It invaded his every thought, every waking moment. But it wasn't hatred that grew in him. It wasn't rage. No, it was something colder, something deeper, a compulsion, an obsession. The eye must go. He convinced himself each night he would approach the old man's room. He'd inch the door open as carefully as a surgeon, with all the precision of someone preparing for a delicate operation. He'd slide the lantern's shutter just wide enough to let a single sliver of light touch the face of the old man. And each time, the eye was closed, safe, dormant. Not yet. But that was before the 8th night. The air that night was thicker. He could feel it as soon as he entered the hallway. The weight of it pressed against his chest, making each breath a struggle. There was a strange tension in the house, a hum beneath the stillness, an energy that was different. When he reached the door, his steps were slow, deliberate. He could hear the soft rustle of the old man's breathing, the faintest whisper of movement. But then, nothing. The old man was still awake. He could feel it. And then, the sound. A faint tremor, a whimper, a barely perceptible noise. Something stirred in the room. "Who's there?" The old man's voice cracked the silence, his words trembling into the dark. The narrator did not reply. He simply watched, waited. Minutes passed, and the tension grew, thick like the fog that never lifted from the ground outside. Then he opened the shutter, just a little. The beam of light cut through the dark, slicing the shadows. It landed on the old man's face, and there it was, his eye wide open, clouded, unblinking. It did not look at the narrator. No, it stared through him. And in that moment, the narrator knew the old man had always known. He'd known everything, and in the quiet, that terrible awareness seemed to fill the room, suffocating them both. And then, the heartbeat. It wasn't the narrator's, it was the old man's. A soft, fragile pulse. At first, almost imperceptible, but then it grew. Faster, louder. It echoed in the walls, it filled the room. It thrummed beneath the floor, in the narrator's skull. A rhythm that would not be ignored. A sound that demanded action, demanded violence. The narrator couldn't resist. His body moved of its own accord, driven by that terrible, insistent sound. He rushed forward, overwhelming the old man with the force of his madness. The old man screamed, a horrible, guttural noise, but it was quickly cut short beneath the weight of the mattress, beneath the crushing weight of the narrator's fury. Bones cracked, flesh spasmed. But the heart, oh, the heart, still beat. It thrashed in its cage, wild and unrelenting. And then, finally, it stopped. Silence. The narrator stood in the dark, panting, sweating, trembling. He grinned, his breath ragged and shallow. It was over. Done. He had rid the world of that cursed eye. He had cleansed the house, but perfection, as always, was fleeting. A knock at the door. 3 officers, calm, polite, professional. They had come because a neighbor heard a scream, a disturbance in the night. Of course they had. He'd anticipated this. The narrator smiled, welcomed them inside. He made pleasant conversation, offered tea, explained how the old man had left early in the morning. How could they not believe him? They did. Of course they did. They sat in the very room, the room above the grave. At first all seemed normal. The tea was served. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. The officer's boots tapped lightly against the floorboards. Everything was fine. But then, the sound started. A soft thump, a muffled noise, distant at first, but then louder, faint, but insistent. The heartbeat. The narrator tried to dismiss it. Perhaps it was the house settling. Perhaps a creak in the floorboards. He smiled nervously, laughed, hoping the officers wouldn't notice. But they didn't react. They continued to sip their tea, their eyes locked on him with a calmness that felt wrong. The sound grew louder, a slow, rhythmic thud. It came from beneath the floor. It was impossible. He had done it perfectly. He had buried the body. He had cleaned every tool, smoothed the boards, replaced the rug. It was flawless. And yet, the heartbeat grew, stronger, louder. It seemed to echo throughout the entire room, filling every corner, pressing down on his chest. They must hear it. Why wouldn't they react? He could feel his control slipping. The room was closing in. The walls felt like they were leaning toward him. The air was thick with it. The sound that wouldn't stop. His skin crawled. His hands trembled. Sweat beaded on his brow. He could not escape it. He tried to smile. He laughed, but the sound of his own laughter was hollow, nervous. He spoke louder, trying to drown it out. "It's nothing," he said, his voice shaking. "Nothing at all." But inside, the pounding was unbearable. The heartbeat had returned. It was everywhere. It was in his mind. It was in his soul. It was the only thing that mattered. And then his sanity broke. "Yes!" he shrieked, standing abruptly. "Yes! Tear up the floor! I did it! I did it! The heart! It still beats!" His voice cracked, high and wild. "Do you not hear it? It still beats! It still beats!" His voice, once calm and rational, had turned into a frenzied scream. He collapsed to the floor, clawing at the boards with bleeding fingers, his body racked with the terror of his own creation. And then, silence. Not relief. Not peace. Just a heavy, suffocating absence. The officers stood in stunned silence. And somewhere, beneath the floor, something finally stopped. Or did it? Because on cold nights, when the moon hangs like an empty eye in the sky, some say the house still stirs, not with wind, not with rats, but with a sound. Faint. Maddening. Ceaseless. A heartbeat. And once you've heard it, you can never unhear it. And so, the tale ends, but the heart continues to beat. Perhaps you've heard it too, in the silence of your own mind. Remember, the price of hearing is more than you might be willing to pay. Thank you for stepping into the Umbra vortex. You've survived tonight. But beware. The shadows remember, and they never cease their hunt. Perhaps there's a chance to slip from their grasp, if you move swiftly enough. Until then, I'm Edward J. Hallow, and the darkness will be waiting.